The morning begins with the sound of a spoon touching a porcelain cup, a small, dry, strangely precise sound. I still make coffee like this every day. 2 spoons of sugar, 1 spoon of powdered milk, stirred exactly 10 times. No more, no less. The only habit I can still control. The kitchen is bright thanks to the sunlight slanting through the window frame. Dust motes in the air float slowly, sparkling like powder. The wooden table has a round burn mark, a trace from when Nora put the iron down as a child. I've kept it, haven't repainted it. Perhaps because it's one of the rare things that reminds me there was once a child running around this house, laughing like sunshine. Now, she doesn't laugh anymore. Nora is grown, has 2 children, and her eyes have learned to avoid mine like avoiding an unpleasant reminder. My daughter lives in the same house, yet it's like she's in another world, one where the sound of my footsteps is just white noise. I cook breakfast, fold clothes, prepare milk for the 2 little ones, all in precise order, like an old ritual. When Nora steps out of her room, hair in a high bun, earbuds plugged in tightly, the scent of cheap perfume wafts by, I just nod. She doesn't respond. Her eyes are glued to her phone, as if everything real in the world exists only on that screen. When the door closes, the house falls into silence. A silence that is not peaceful. It's like the sound of walking on snow, thick, damp, and swallowing everything. I clear the table, wash the dishes, and sit down again. The coffee is cold. I drink it all. There's no reason to leave it unfinished. Sometimes I think I'm like a shadow. No one intentionally shoos me away, but no one notices when I disappear either. Every day I go to the market, buy everything they need, then listen to Nora complain that the rent has increased, her salary has decreased, the kids are tiring. I nod as a habit, nodding to end the conversation before it truly begins. I used to believe that if I sacrificed enough, was patient enough, love would return. But it turns out, love also needs soil to live. And I, for so many years, have only grown it on gravel. In the afternoon, the 2 kids come home from school. I hear their laughter, light as the wind. I make snacks, prepare milk, tidy up toys. No one asks me to do it, but if I stopped, the house would fall into chaos. Perhaps that's the only reason I still exist here, to keep everything running without anyone noticing. At night, when the house sleeps, I stay awake. Not because of insomnia, but because I'm used to the dark. I often open the closet, looking at the old clothes of my husband, the man who left more than 20 years ago. His scent is gone. Only a thin layer of dust remains, like ash. I never burned those memories, but they have been smoldering on their own for a long time. Sometimes I look in the mirror. The woman looking back at me no longer resembles anyone I used to know. Thinning hair, wrinkled skin, and empty eyes. I realize no one has called me by my real name in years. They call me Mom, Grandma, or worse, the babysitter. When did I lose myself? Perhaps it was when I was no longer allowed to be tired. One time, Nora said to a friend, "My mom stays here. It's convenient. Saves hiring a nanny." I heard it, even though she wasn't speaking to me. I wasn't angry, just cold. The cold of realizing my role had been changed from mother to service. The days pass like photocopies. I clean, wash, cook, listen to the clock tick, then clean again. My life is like a room with no doors, only a calendar on the wall to mark time. Every evening, when I turn off the lights, I often whisper in my head, "Tomorrow, maybe I'll do something different." But in the morning, I make coffee again. 2 spoons of sugar, 1 spoon of milk, stirred exactly 10 times. No more, no less. One afternoon, while doing laundry, I saw a small streak of blood on my cuff. I thought it was dish soap, but it wasn't. The red spread quickly, darkening. I sat down, my hand trembling. The first feeling wasn't fear, but calm, like a reminder that my body still exists. It was crying for help, and I had only just started to listen. That evening, I stood before the mirror again. Nothing had changed, only my gaze was different. For the first time in years, I saw myself in it. Not a mother, not a maid, not a shadow. Just Evelyn Parker, a human being with a heart that was cracking, and perhaps, one day, would dare to speak. The very next morning, I went to the clinic. No appointment. Didn't even know who I needed to see. I just brought an old blood test result, folded in 4, tucked in my pocket. It was cold. Not because of the wind, but because I was so empty inside that the wind passed right through me. The waiting room smelled of disinfectant and an old air conditioner. People talked about medicine prices, about MRI promotions, about average life expectancy. I sat among them, hands on my lap, trying to stay silent like a piece of furniture. When the nurse called my name, I stood up slowly, afraid that any strong movement would shatter everything inside me. The doctor was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a voice as flat as a machine. He looked at the file, asked a few questions. I answered briefly. Nothing to tell. Just a few months of fatigue, weight loss, unusual bleeding. He nodded, typed a few keys, printed the result. Terminal cancer, he said, his voice not changing rhythm. Chemotherapy is an option if you want to prolong things. I didn't ask how long. Not because I was brave, but because I knew, no matter how long, there was no one waiting for me at the end of that road. When I stepped out of the room, the hallway was excessively bright. I had to squint. The white, emotionless light shone straight in my face, as if the whole world was trying to see through me. I walked past the reception, heard the laughter of a young nurse. Everyone was busy living. Only I stood lost in the crowd, holding a thin piece of paper like a verdict. I called a taxi. The driver was young, playing loud music, a cheerful pop song. The singer sang about youth, about dreams, about freedom. I looked through the window. The streets blurred past. Signs, green lights, red lights, people rushing across the street. Everything moved like a fast-forwarded movie, and I was just a still frame. At a bend, I caught my reflection in the glass. Pale skin, dry lips, sunken eyes. I realized I was older than I thought. The driver asked quietly, "Are you okay, ma'am?" I nodded, not to reassure him, but because I no longer knew how to tell the truth to anyone. When I got home, Nora wasn't back yet. The kids were at school. The house was quiet, only the faint hum of the refrigerator. I left the diagnosis on the table, next to the framed family photo from 2009, the only one left. Back then, Nora was still smiling, her arm around my shoulder, saying, "Mom, you're my whole world." Photos never betray. They hold on to the smiles that people have dropped. In the afternoon, Nora called. Her voice was rushed, not out of worry, but out of busyness. "Mom, I heard the doctor said you have something?" "Cancer," I said concisely. A pause, then a short sigh, like replying to an email. "Oh, God. You should probably hire a nurse. I can't keep taking time off work." "All right," I replied. The call ended. No one said, "I love you, Mom," or "Are you okay, Mom?" Just two strangers who happened to share a bloodline. In the evening, I opened the cabinet, took out the old notebook I used for expenses. The first page read, "Electricity, $38. The last page was blank. I added a small line, my handwriting trembling slightly. The body has begun its betrayal, but the mind still hears everything clearly. I put the notebook away. A strange thought echoed in my head. Maybe this isn't a death sentence, but the first chance for me to stop. I used to be afraid of death. Now I'm more afraid of living while no one realizes I'm dying. Late at night, Nora came home. She opened the fridge, rummaged for leftovers, heated them in the microwave. I stood at the kitchen doorway, watching, saying nothing. When she saw me, Nora frowned slightly. "You're not asleep. If you're tired, go rest. Don't overdo it." I wanted to say, "I'm not tired from housework. I'm tired from the way you look at me." But I stayed silent. Some things you don't say to be understood, but just to prove you still have a voice. And I hadn't used mine in so long. That night, I lay listening to my heartbeat. Steady, but weak. Like a knock from the inside. I imagined the hospital room, the smell of medicine, the white lights, the beeping machines. I would lie there, and they would say, "Poor old woman, at least she has a daughter." But I knew Nora wouldn't come. She was busy, always busy. I turned over, looking out the window. Outside, the moon was blindingly bright. The cold light shone on my forehead, as if to say, "It's time." I didn't know what "it's time" meant, to die, or to start truly living. I only knew tomorrow morning I would call the hospital. Not to complain, but to choose a private nurse. Not because I needed someone to take care of me, but because, for the first time in my life, I wanted someone to truly see me. And then I met Lisa on a Tuesday morning, when the sky was still misty and the coffee hadn't had time to cool. She walked into my house with a neat gait, carrying a scent that was both clean and unfamiliar, like freshly laundered fabric dried in the early sun. "Hello, Mrs. Parker," she said, her voice soft, just loud enough to hear. I nodded. An old habit, responding with silence. Lisa was about 30, brown hair and a high ponytail, her eyes so calm it was hard to guess her emotions. She didn't talk much. No compliments, no pity. Nor did she try to ease the awkward atmosphere. That, strangely, made me feel at ease. The first morning, Lisa made me a cup of herbal tea. She didn't ask what I liked, but the tea was just right. Not too bitter, not too sweet. "You should drink it slowly," she said. I watched the steam rise, then asked quietly, "How long have you been doing this?" 7 years, she replied, her eyes not leaving the teapot. "I started after my mother passed away." The answer was short, neat like the way she folded towels in the closet. But I understood more. Some people choose to care for others because they once knew what it felt like not to be cared for. The first day passed like that. Lisa worked without a sound. She didn't disturb my things, didn't ask personal questions, didn't try to be overly familiar. I lay listening to the sound of her shoes on the wooden floor, a steady rhythm like the heartbeat of a house waking from a long sleep. In the afternoon, she peeled an apple for me, thin slices, arranged neatly on a plate. I said softly, "My daughter prefers apples to pears." She smiled faintly. "I peeled this for you, not for her." A normal sentence, but it made me pause. It had been so long since anyone spoke to me as if I were the main character in the story. That evening, Nora came home. She scanned Lisa from head to toe, her eyes full of suspicion. "This is the nurse?" "Yes," I replied. Nora nodded, but couldn't hide her annoyance. "Good. Less work for me. I'm very busy." The words fell like a small stone, but echoed in my head for a long time. Lisa stood behind me, saying nothing, just gently placing a blanket on my knees. That simple act made me feel warm for the first time in months. Night fell. I heard Nora close her door, the sound of typing, the sound of the kids watching videos in the next room. Amidst those familiar sounds, the sound of Lisa tidying the room felt strange. Her every light touch seemed to reorder the very air. I asked quietly, "Don't you get bored doing the same things over and over?" Lisa paused, turned to me, and said softly, "I don't think it's repetitive, if the person you're doing it for is worth it." I was silent. Not because I was moved, but because I was afraid to reveal that my heart had just trembled. The second day, she opened the curtains earlier than usual. Sunlight streamed into the room that had long known only yellow lamplight. "Light is good for the body," she said. I sat up, watching the dust dance in the sunbeam, nodding silently. Perhaps my body didn't need more light, but my soul did. A week passed, and I began to get used to Lisa's presence. She didn't ask much, but was always there at the right time. When I coughed, she poured water. When I was silent for too long, she opened the window. No words needed, no permission asked. It was as if she knew well that the silence of the elderly isn't about peace, but about the fear of not being heard. On Friday afternoon, it rained. I sat watching the raindrops race down the glass. Lisa was rearranging the medicine cabinet. I blurted out, "Do you ever feel lost?" She stopped, turned around. "Yes, but I choose not to stay standing in that place." I looked at her. Perhaps that's why she was still young, still alive. And I had been standing still for too long. That night, as Lisa was leaving, she paused at the door. "Tomorrow I'll bring you some tea my mother used to like. It's fragrant, but a bit bitter, like real life." I smiled, just slightly, having forgotten how to laugh out loud. "Thank you." Lisa just nodded. Nothing more. After she left, the house was quiet again, but it was a different silence. No longer cold, just empty. The kind of empty that makes you want to fill it with something real. I sat at the table, opened my notebook, wrote a short, slow line. "Perhaps I can still be seen, not because I am weak, but because someone is willing to look." I put the pen down, looked up, and for the first time, saw myself living in that moment. Small, fragile, but real. Until that one morning, it was raining lightly. An old kind of rain, fine, persistent, not loud. The smell of dampness seeped through the door, clinging to the walls and my skin. I sat in my chair, listening to Lisa in the bedroom, cleaning out the closet. She said she wanted to freshen the air. I let her. For a long time, I hadn't bothered with tidying. Everything around me was already prepared to disintegrate. A moment later, Lisa came out, holding an old yellowed envelope, the edges frayed and wrinkled like old skin. "Do you want to keep this?" she asked. I looked. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Michael Parker. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I nodded slightly, then held out my hand. She placed the envelope in my palm, asking no more questions. Then she quietly went to make tea. I looked at the envelope. The writing was shaky but firm. The old address. The house in Brookdale I left 20 years ago, with an 8-year-old child in my arms. I had never opened that letter. When the post office delivered it, I just glanced at it, then put it straight into the closet, among the winter coats. Maybe I was scared. Or maybe I already knew I didn't want to hear another word from the man who had once silenced me to the point of exhaustion. My fingers trembled as I tore the flap. The smell of old paper wafted out, musty, damp, like the smell of rotten memories. Inside were 3 sheets of paper, folded carefully. I opened them and read. Evelyn, I don't know where to begin. I guess you won't read this, or you'll read it and not forgive me. And I understand. Some things can't be apologized for with words. I sat still. My eyes stopped on every word. Michael's handwriting, slanted slightly, a bit hard at the beginning of each line, like someone always trying to control their emotions. I lied to our daughter. I told her you left because you were bored, because you were selfish, because you couldn't handle the responsibility. I let her believe that, because it was easier than admitting I was the one who pushed you away. I couldn't stand your silence, Evelyn. You were always quiet, and it scared me. I needed noise to believe I was still loved. I looked up. The rain was heavier. The sound of it on the tin roof merged with my heartbeat. Steady, heavy, unchanging. Lisa placed a cup of tea on the table, saying nothing. Her eyes were quiet, as if she knew I needed silence more than comfort. I continued reading. I did many foolish things. I had an affair, then blamed you. I told Nora her mother wasn't good, that she left for another man. I thought I was protecting her, but I was really just hiding my own cowardice. I'm writing this letter because I'm afraid I'll die before you know that I was wrong. That for the past 20 years, I was the reason Nora looks at you with those cold eyes. A drop of water fell onto the page. I didn't know if it was rain or from my eyes. I had waited so many years for someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, wasn't bad, wasn't unfeeling, and when it came, it was too late to change anything. I read the last line. If you have anything left for me, don't let her live like I lived, in lies and regret. Michael. The letter ended. I folded it, placed it on the table. My hand was still shaking, but my heart was calm. Lisa stood near the door, not daring to ask. I said quietly, he admitted everything. She nodded. A man who knows how to admit his faults at least leaves something decent behind. I looked at her. He left nothing. Only ruins and a daughter who learned to despise her mother. The words came out easily, as if I had practiced them in my head for years. That afternoon, I didn't eat. I sat looking at the letter, thinking about the past, about the days I held Nora's hand walking through the park, telling her fairy tales, shielding her from the rain. All those things now only existed in my head. To her, I was just the woman who left. I used to think time would fix what words had broken. Now I know. Time only helps the wound scar over. The poison still flows inside. As Lisa tidied the room, she asked softly, "Are you going to let Miss Nora know about the letter?" I replied, "Not yet. People can't hear the truth until they're ready. And she is still drunk on the illusion of her own righteousness." Lisa was quiet, folded the blanket, then placed the envelope in a new drawer. She did it carefully, as if burying something sacred. That night, I sat down to write my will, not because I was afraid of dying, but because I wanted, for the first time, for my decision to have value. I wrote Lisa's name, wrote a fund for the 2 kids. Every word I wrote was clear, distinct, not shaky, as if I had finally taken back control of my life, even if only in the final chapter. Before sleeping, I added a small line in my journal. Death isn't scary. Being misunderstood your whole life is the heaviest sentence. Then I turned off the light. Outside, the rain had stopped. But in my chest, There was still a faint falling sound, the rain inside that never ceases. Then the storm finally broke. I heard Nora in the living room before I saw her. The sound of paper being flipped hastily, the sound of rapid breathing, and then a thick, heavy silence. The silence that precedes a storm. What is this? Her voice rang out, sharp as a knife. I didn't need to turn around to know what she was holding. The will. The paper I wrote that night, folded carefully, placed in the drawer with the old letter. Maybe Lisa forgot to lock it when she was cleaning. I took a deep breath. Calm, like someone who had waited their whole life for this scene. My will, I said. Nora scoffed, a short laugh, devoid of joy, full of venom. I see it. Your name and Lisa's name. This whole house, the savings, everything. You're leaving it to her? A stranger who just arrived a few months ago? I looked at her. Her eyes were just like Michael's when he was angry, bloodshot, trying to appear in control but crumbling inside. She's not a stranger, I said. She treats me like a person. And what about me? Nora cut in. I'm your blood. I've been here with you all these years, taking care of you, worrying about you, and now you're throwing me away for a helper? I didn't speak immediately. I just looked straight at her, so long that her gaze began to waver. No, Nora, you don't take care of me. You just use me. Perhaps you've forgotten. I cook, I do laundry, I watch your children. It's all unpaid labor that you call duty. Her face flushed. What are you saying? You're being manipulated by her. You're sick. You're not in your right mind anymore. I won't let her take what belongs to this family. I smiled. A smile as thin as a paper cut. This family? If this is a family, why do I eat alone every night? Why do I have to listen to you complain about work but never hear you ask, Mom, are you okay? Nora took half a step back, her voice higher, cracking. I do everything I can. I'm raising 2 kids. I go to work. I don't have time for this sentimental nonsense. Exactly, I said softly. Because to you, I'm just a convenience. The air hissed, thick as smoke. Nora threw the papers on the table. The sound was dry, cold. I won't let this happen. I'll call a lawyer. I'll prove you're not legally competent. We'll see who the court believes, a daughter or a manipulative nurse. Lisa stepped out from the hallway. She stood still, not intervening. Her face was calm, but I saw her hands clench slightly. Nora turned to her, her gaze full of contempt. You're happy, aren't you? Your little scheme worked. Lisa didn't answer. She just said quietly, to me, I'll step out for a bit. The door closed. The house was dead silent. Nora turned back, tears welling, not from sadness, but from a wounded ego. You're really choosing her over me? I looked at the child I bore, and in that moment, I saw clearly that we were both products of deprivation. She lacked love, and I lacked the courage to demand respect. It was too late now, but still in time to speak the truth. I'm not choosing anyone, Nora. I'm just choosing myself for the first time in my life. She shook her head, sneering. Pathetic. You're old, being tricked and you don't even know it. Maybe, I replied. But at least the person tricking me, if she is, makes me feel like I exist. That sentence made her freeze. The anger in her eyes subsided, replaced by something like confusion. Then she said quietly, almost a whisper, Dad was right. You were always cold, always distant. No one could stand someone like you. I replied, my voice even. Your father wrote me a letter before he died. In it, he apologized. He said he was the one who made you misunderstand. I'm not distant, Nora. I'm just silent because no one wanted to listen anymore. She stared, as if hearing a foreign language. What letter? You're making it up to defend yourself. As you wish. I stood up, picked up my tea, walked past her. My voice was light, but each word fell like a stone. No one defends a verdict that has already expired. I'm just living out the rest of my life the way I have the right to. As I passed, Nora said softly, choked, I hate you. I stopped, turned my head, my gaze calm. I know, but I still love you, and that is the tragedy of it all. I went to my room, closed the door. Downstairs, I heard Nora crying. Not loud, not fake, but real. The sound of someone who hadn't been taught how to love for a very long time. I sat on the bed, sighing. I didn't regret it, just tired. A pleasant kind of tired. Like I had just lifted a boulder off my chest, even if it was all bruised underneath. Before sleeping, I wrote another short line in my journal. Finally, I spoke. Not to win against anyone. Just to hear my own voice again. To turn those words into action, I went to the lawyer's office on a cloudless morning. The sky was uncomfortably clear, as if the heavens were trying to make everything look lighter than the truth. Lisa came with me, but she sat quietly in the waiting area, not coming in. I'll wait out here, she said, her voice low. I nodded. No thanks needed. Her presence was enough. The office was small, white walls, old leather chairs, the smell of weak coffee. Mr. Harlan, my lawyer, was about 60, thin, wearing round glasses. He read every line of the will, his pen tapping lightly on the desk like a clock. Are you sure, Mrs. Parker? I'm sure, I said. He looked up, meeting my gaze through his glasses. It seems you're disinheriting your daughter entirely. This will be contentious. I know, I replied. But contentious is the only thing she's actively been with me for years. At least this time she has a valid reason. Harlan pursed his lips, then placed the paper in front of me. Sign here and here. I took the pen. My hand didn't shake. The ink soaked slowly into the paper, like ink seeping into a life. Not flowery, not symbolic, just a signature. But to me, it felt as heavy as a declaration. When I finished, Harlan collected the paper, his voice low. Do you want to add any notes? I want one final sentence. As you wish. I spoke slowly, clearly. I leave this inheritance to the person who saw me as a human being, not as an obligation. Harlan looked up, held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. I will draft it exactly as stated. I stood up. I suddenly felt light. Not saved light, but set down light. Like putting down something I'd carried for so long, I'd forgotten how heavy it was. As I walked to the door, Harlan called out, Mrs. Parker, I hope you find peace. I paused and replied without turning around. I don't need peace. I just need the truth. Lisa was still in the waiting chair, hands on her lap. When she saw me, she just asked, Okay? Okay. I said it, and for the first time, I truly believed the word. On the way home, the car rolled through familiar streets. I looked out, saw young women pushing strollers, talking on their phones. I wondered if, in 10 or 20 years, they would be sitting like me, silently regretting letting others define their love. When I got home, Nora wasn't there. The house was quiet, as if after a storm. Lisa prepared tea. I sat. We didn't speak. She asked softly, Are you afraid? Of what? Her reaction. What happens next? I smiled faintly. You don't understand, Lisa. I've lived my whole life in fear. Now, there's only living left. In the afternoon, Nora returned. The door slammed so hard the picture frame on the wall rattled. You did it, didn't you? Her voice was hoarse with anger. I didn't look up. Yes. I'm serious, Mom. You're being controlled by her. Can't you see she's using you? I replied, my voice even. She takes care of me. You only take care of yourself. She laughed bitterly. You think I don't love you? I said, no. I think you never learned to show love without it being tied to possession. She stood there, eyes blazing. I knew one more word and she would scream. But I didn't give her the chance. I've signed it, Nora. Everything is legal. I don't need you to forgive me. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know. This time, I mean it. And I won't change my mind. Nora was silent for a few seconds. Then a dry, angry sob escaped. I hate you. You'll die in this house with only her. I looked straight into her eyes. Maybe. But I will die by my own choice. And you will keep living in someone else's shadow if you refuse to look back. She turned away, too angry to breathe, and stormed up to her room. I heard her footsteps pounding the stairs, fast, hard, as if trying to crush the floorboards. Lisa came in, holding a glass of water. I'm sorry, she said. I should have locked the drawer that day. It's fine, I replied. The truth finds a way out, sooner or later. She looked at me, a strange expression in her eyes. Part pity, part respect. You're very strong. I shook my head slightly. Not strong, Lisa. It's just, when you reach a certain age, you understand. Silence can also be a sin. She said no more. We sat in silence. But this time, the silence wasn't like before. Not a dark pit swallowing me, but a space for a new beginning, even if there was very little time left. Before sleeping, I opened my journal. A fresh, blank page, I wrote. I have signed. Not for revenge, but to let my name stand tall on paper after half a lifetime of being forced to bow. I put the pen down, closed the book. Outside, the late afternoon sun was setting, a slow, still, clear light that needed no further explanation. But Nora didn't accept it, and the rumors spread faster than disease. I don't know who Nora started with, but it only took 3 days for the whole neighborhood to know that nurse is squeezing money out of Mrs. Parker. They said she put sleeping pills in my tea, forced me to sign papers, then faked sickness to extend her contract. After hearing it, I just stayed quiet. But this silence wasn't endurance. It was observation. On Tuesday afternoon, Mrs. Lambert from next door came knocking. Everyone's worried about you, she said, her voice laced with the excitement of someone smelling a scandal. Your daughter said that nurse is controlling you. I just want to remind you, be careful not to get swindled. I invited her in, poured tea. Thank you, Mrs. Lambert. If I were being swindled, I think I would know. I've lived long enough to recognize who treats me with real kindness. She gave a strained laugh, unsure whether to believe me or pity me. When she left, I saw my reflection in the glass. Old, thin, but calm. Perhaps that's what bothered them. A dying woman who was still so serene. The next afternoon, Lisa didn't come. She texted, I've been temporarily suspended due to a complaint. I'm sorry, I'll resolve this and come back. I read and reread the message, feeling as if the air had been sucked from my lungs. Not because I was afraid of losing her, but because I knew this time Nora truly wanted destruction. She didn't want the assets. She wanted to win, and her victory was watching me lose. That night, Nora came home late. She avoided my gaze, but when I asked, her voice was so cold it was no longer human. I'm just telling the truth. You're being deceived. I can't just stand by, I replied. You're not standing by, Nora. You're standing on. She frowned. What are you talking about? standing on others to maintain your feeling of righteousness. You're more like your father than you think." The words shattered the air like glass. Nora left, slamming the door. I heard her car speed away, fast, rushed, as if she didn't run, she would hear her own voice. The next day, someone from social services came. They had received a report of suspected elder manipulation. I invited them in, poured water, gave them medical papers, the nursing contract, receipts, everything. The young employee looked at me, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we have to verify." "I understand," I said. "You're just doing your job. But if you write a report, please write this: Mrs. Evelyn Parker, still lucid enough to know who loves her." The girl was silent, then bowed her head. As she left, I saw that look in her eyes, the look of someone who had just encountered an awkward truth. Sometimes, the one labeled the victim is the only sane person in the house. In the afternoon, Lisa returned. She was thinner, her eyes bruised, but she still stood tall. They investigated me. They went through my personal accounts. I was going to quit, but then I thought again. "I'm not leaving while you're still here." I looked at her and said slowly, "You don't need to apologize. You did what others didn't dare to. You stayed." She sat down, smiled faintly, her voice hoarse. "Staying is sometimes a punishment." "I know," I replied. "But sometimes it's the only way to prove kindness still exists." 3 days later, there was a neighborhood community meeting. I went, uninvited, but I went. The room was small, smelling of paper and sweat. Everyone turned when they saw me. Nora sat in the front row, next to Mrs. Lambert. Lisa stood back, her face calm, but her eyes red. The moderator said, "There's a complaint regarding Mrs. Parker's assets and Ms. Grant's conduct. Would you like to speak?" I stood up, my voice still even. Yes. All eyes were on me. I didn't tremble. I spoke slowly, clearly, like narrating a soul's testimony. "I am Evelyn Parker. I have lived in this house for 27 years. I raised a child, and now I am dying. All my life, I have let others decide for me what to eat, what to wear, how to feel. I was wrong. I hired Lisa Grant not because I needed a nurse, but because I needed a witness to the fact that I am still a person, even if I've been forgotten. If leaving my assets to the person who respected me is wrong, then please write in the file that I am guilty of choosing kindness." No one said anything. The air was thick. Nora turned away, her lips trembling, not daring to look at me. I sat down. The meeting ended early. No one dared to discuss it further. That night, Lisa drove me home. "On the way," she said softly, "I've never seen anyone stand in front of a crowd and talk about their own death so calmly." I gave a small, dry laugh. "That's because I'm already dead, Lisa. My heart is just finishing up the paperwork." She laughed, then fell silent. In the sound of the car, I heard something strange. My heart was no longer heavy. I didn't know if the neighbors would stop gossiping or if Nora would feel regret. But I knew I had just protected someone and perhaps saved the last shred of my own dignity. That night, I wrote, "I have testified for myself. When no one else believes you, you must stand up and be your own evidence." I closed the notebook. Outside, the city lights were still on, and I, for the first time in years, felt a strange peace in my heart, not from winning, but from no longer being afraid to lose. My mind was set, but these past few days, my body began its betrayal. My hands trembled more, my steps shortened. Sometimes my breath would catch in my chest. unable to go in or out. But I wasn't afraid. I just felt tired. A tiredness that didn't need curing, only acceptance. Lisa stayed almost all day. She didn't talk much anymore, just moved around the house, quietly changing the flower water, opening windows, clearing the table, making porridge. Every gesture was slow, light, as if afraid of hurting the air. Nora didn't come back. I didn't call. I knew the distance between us was as long as a lifetime, and sometimes forgiveness also requires silence. I wasn't angry. I just didn't want to waste more energy waiting. That afternoon, it rained. A fine, quiet rain, wetting the glass. I sat by the window, watching the drops slide down, connecting into long streaks like nameless years. Lisa sat nearby, knitting a scarf. She was making it for the kids, said it was an end-of-winter gift. I watched her hands, quick, skilled, and thought, some people aren't born to stand out, but to keep the world from collapsing. She was one of those few. In the evening, the power went out. No warning. The house sank into thick darkness. Lisa rummaged in a cabinet, found a small candle. She lit it. The weak yellow light flickered, reflecting on the walls, making everything look like it was melting together. The smell of hot wax mingled with the aroma of tea. A smell so warm, so peaceful, it made you remember you were once happy. Are you cold? She asked. No, I replied. In truth, I was, but I liked this cold. It was clean. It demanded nothing. She sat in the chair opposite me. No one spoke. The clock had stopped ticking at some point, leaving only the sound of rain dripping from the eaves. I looked at the candle, the small flame, trembling but stubborn. It kept burning, even as a small draft blew through the door. I spoke softly, unsure if I was speaking to her or to myself. People are like candles. No one knows how long they'll burn. You just hope that when you go out, there's still a little warmth left. Lisa looked up. The yellow light illuminated her face. Those eyes, tired but warm, sad but not broken. Do you ever think about an afterlife? I used to, I replied. Now I don't need to. One life is enough if you finally get to be yourself. She was quiet, bowed her head, her hands clasped. I saw she wanted to say something, then stopped. I smiled. Don't pity me, Lisa. I don't. I'm just afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid that one day there won't be anyone left like you who dares to live truthfully, even when it's late. I exhaled, nodding slightly. Don't be afraid. As long as one person remembers, I haven't disappeared. We sat like that for a long time. The candle tilted, casting our two shadows on the wall. One old, one young, one about to leave, one still living. The two shadows touched in the middle of the light, like two generations passing a final breath between them. I suddenly said, my voice light as wind, if there is a next life, I hope to be a free person. Right from the start. Lisa smiled. And I hope to meet you again, even if it's just in passing. I didn't answer. I just gently took her hand. Her hand was warm, firm, enveloping my cold one. Neither of us spoke again. No need. There are moments when words only wound the silence. The night dragged on. The candle burned down. I listened to my heart. Slow, steady, patient. I knew there wasn't much time left. But strangely, I had no regrets. Every minute now was real. Not fake, not borrowed, not for anyone else. Lisa finished tidying, sat back down. I said softly, you should rest. There's a lot to do tomorrow. She shook her head. I'll sit here until you sleep. I nodded, closing my eyes. In the flickering darkness, I heard the wind sweep past the window, the dripping rain, and the smell of the burnt-out candle. Everything faded. Only a thin streak of light, like a golden thread, stretched across the space. Fragile, but still stubbornly resisting the dark. I opened my eyes one last time, watching the flame tremble before it went out. "So beautiful," I said. Lisa asked softly. "What is, ma'am?" "The light, just before it dies." Then I closed my eyes. This time, not from tiredness, but from true peace. The kind that comes slowly, late, but is worth more than a lifetime of endurance. And then, on the first morning after the blackout, the sunlight returned. Not yellow, not warm, just hazy, white like diluted mist. The house was quiet, the smell of candle wax still lingering in the air, faint like a person's lingering presence. I woke up, but I didn't see Lisa. On the table was a tray with steaming tea and a folded note. "I went to get Miss Nora. Don't be angry. Don't. I think you need to see her, not to argue this time, but to find closure." Lisa's handwriting was round, even, small. I read it, my heart trembling slightly. Maybe she was right. Not everything should be left in silence. I sat there, waiting. Outside, the sound of cars, of people, of birds. All the sounds of life went on, as if no one in the world knew someone was sitting here, counting the last minutes of her life. A soft knock on the door. Lisa entered first, followed by Nora. She stood silently at the threshold, clutching a small object. It was the envelope, her father's letter. The room sank into a long silence, broken only by the ticking clock. I motioned for Lisa to leave us alone. She nodded, retreated, closing the door. Nora approached, sat down opposite me. Her face was pale, eyes swollen, hair messy. No longer angry, just tired. She placed the envelope on the table, pushing it toward me. "I read it," she said quietly. I looked at her, asking nothing. She took a deep breath, then said, "I've hated you for half my life. I thought you left Dad, left me, left everything. Dad said you were a cold person, and I believed him. Now, reading this, I feel so stupid." I didn't reply. I just watched her, for a long time. For the first time in years, I saw in her eyes the image of the little girl who used to wait for me after school, eyes that hadn't learned to lie. I spoke slowly, my voice hoarse. "Not stupid, Nora. You were just taught the wrong things about love." She bowed her head, her shoulders shaking. "I did terrible things to you. I lied, I slandered Lisa, I sued you. I don't deserve to be forgiven." I smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't a gift for those who are worthy. It's something people choose for themselves, to live more lightly. But you still have the right to be angry with me. I've been angry my whole life, Nora. I don't have the strength to be angry anymore," she cried. For the first time, truly cried. Not an explosion, but a silent cry, the kind that makes your own heart ache. I raised my hand, wiped the tears from my daughter's cheek. My fingers were cold. Her tears were warm. The two met in the middle, then vanished. A long moment later, Nora spoke, her voice choked. "I don't know where to begin to apologize." "You don't need to," I said. "All apologies begin with silence. You came. That's enough." We sat next to each other, not speaking, just letting time pass, gentle and slow like an instrumental song. Nora took my hand, held it tight. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared too," I replied. "But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It just reminds you that you're still alive." The sunlight slanted, illuminating the table where Michael's letter lay open. I looked at the last line, where he wrote, "If you have anything left for me, don't let her live like I lived, in lies and regret." I read it again, not with resentment, but like reading a final judgment. I turned to Nora. Your father did a terrible thing, but he left you a gift, the truth. As for me, I leave you freedom. Don't use it to punish yourself anymore. She nodded, gripping my hand tighter. I want to stay, she said. Good, I smiled. But not to take care of me. Stay to live more kindly. For yourself. We sat like that until the afternoon faded. Lisa returned, carrying 2 cups of tea. Nora looked at her, not avoiding her gaze this time. I'm sorry, she said, her voice genuine. Lisa just replied softly, I know. Nothing more was needed. 3 women, 3 generations, sitting around a tea table in a house full of light, each having lost something, and now each having found a small piece of themselves. When Lisa went out to clean, I said to Nora, if I don't wake up tomorrow, don't cry. I'm not leaving. I'm just returning to myself. She burst into tears. Don't say that. I smiled, faint as a breath. My love, some things must be said before it's too late. I've been silent for too long. Nora buried her head in my hands, crying like a child. I stroked her hair, slowly, rhythmically. In that moment, I no longer felt sick, no longer felt time. Only 2 people, one near the end of her road, one who had just found her way back. The last sunlight streamed through the window, golden as honey, casting itself on my daughter's face. I looked at her, whispering, this forgiveness isn't to free you. It's to free me. She looked up, tears still glistening. Mom. Shh, I said softly. Don't say anything. Just listen. I love you. I never stopped. It's just that the way of showing it was distorted by silence for too long. She nodded, grasping my hand, squeezing it tight. Outside, the birds were returning to their nests. Inside, the room was sinking into quiet light. I knew this moment would be our last touch. But for the first time in years, I felt my heart beat slow and full, not with fear, but with peace. A peace like a goodbye that doesn't need to be spoken. The next morning, the sky was very still. No wind, no cars, just a light as thin as a white veil draped over the house. I woke up in absolute silence, a silence that wasn't frightening, but comforting. Lisa was making tea in the kitchen, the scent of chamomile drifting in. Nora had fallen asleep in the chair, her head resting on her arms, eyes still swollen. I looked at them both and smiled faintly. Nothing left to say, nothing left to hold on to. I wanted to sit up, but I didn't have the strength. My body felt like it was made of mist. Every movement dissolved. So I just lay there, watching the sunlight crawl up the wall, stopping at the small photo frame. A picture of me, Nora, and the 2 kids, taken on a normal day. Back then, no one knew that photo would be the only thing to hold us together. Lisa came in, placing a cup of tea on the table. It's a beautiful day, she said. I know, I replied, my voice barely a breath. Nora stirred, waking up. When she saw my eyes open, she leaned forward. Mom, do you want anything to eat? I shook my head. No. I just want to hear you talk. She took my hand, which was still trembling slightly. I'm sorry I was so late. It's not late, I said softly. Sometimes you have to go very far away to see you were standing in the right place all along. We sat in that light. No time, no past, no future. Just 3 people. 1 about to leave, 2 about to continue. I spoke softly, each word slow like a prayer. If I don't wake up tomorrow, don't cry. Live as I always wished. Be kind, but don't forget who you are. Don't let life turn you into someone who merely exists. Nora nodded, tears falling onto my hand. Lisa turned away, hiding a sigh. Outside, a wind began to rise. But it was a gentle wind, carrying the smell of damp earth, the smell of beginnings. I felt tired, but peaceful. My breathing grew thinner, then dissolved. All sounds faded away, leaving only the sound of my heart, slow, steady, then stopping, like a song ending on the perfect beat. In the afternoon, Nora opened the window. Light flooded the room. Lisa stood by the bed, gently pulling the blanket up over Evelyn. There were no tears, only silence. A silence as clear as glass, where pain no longer needed to be voiced. A week later, the funeral was simple. No expensive flowers, no long eulogies, just soft background music, the scent of tea, and a few neighbors standing quietly. Nora read a short passage from her mother's journal. The very last page. I have lived my last day to the fullest. Her voice trembled, but it was clear. Lisa stood beside her, holding a single white chrysanthemum. She placed it on the casket, whispering, "You were seen, Evelyn. You were finally seen." Afterward, Nora and Lisa established the Evelyn Parker Foundation. The name was Lisa's suggestion, and Nora wrote the introduction. For the forgotten women, so they know that dignity is not something to be given, but something they own. The foundation was small, without much money, but every year it helped dozens of middle-aged women learn a trade to start again. Nora often said to Lisa, "It's how Mom continues to live," and Lisa would reply, "No, it's how we continue to learn to see others, the way she taught us." Many years later, on a quiet afternoon, Nora brought her 2 children to the old house. It had been renovated into a support center for women, walls painted white, windows widened, light pouring in. On the main wall was a small brass plaque engraved with the words, "Freedom is not about leaving. Freedom is daring to live as you deserve." E. Parker. Nora stood silently. The wind blew through her hair, the scent of dried chamomile in the air. She saw her mother in her mind's eye, the small figure, the calm gaze, the smile tilted toward the light. No more resentment, no more debts, only a whisper in her heart. Mom is home. Lisa approached from a distance, holding a cup of tea. "It's her birthday today," she said. "I know." Nora smiled. "Mom would have hated the fuss, so we'll just be quiet." The 2 women sat on a stone bench, watching the sunlight fall through the trees, sparkling. No one spoke, only the sound of the wind, the leaves, and somewhere, like Evelyn's soft laugh, dissolving in the air. Evening fell. The last light of the day spilled onto the wall, the exact same color as the candlelight all those years ago. Lisa looked at it and said softly, "She never really left, did she?" Nora nodded. "No, she just went far enough to be free." They both looked out at the wide open sky, where the light was fading but not extinguished. In that moment, they understood. Some people disappear from the world, but they remain in every kind act, in every honest breath, in every time a person chooses to love without reason. And somewhere, in that light, Evelyn Parker smiled, not because she was remembered, but because finally she was seen. A lifetime of silence, ending in light. A small woman who finally rewrote the definition of dignity with her own gentle death.